What's up, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down why Tesla still has more upside potential, especially if we break this resistance right here, and why this upside move might not last as long as people think, because we have another factor that could be affecting the overall markets and possibly cause a pullback as soon as next week. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice whatsoever. So looking at Tesla, we have a nice accumulation that's been forming right here, and we have resistance at this 368 area, which is where Tesla went to. We did talk about how if Tesla breaks past 355, we're looking for the 360s. And in my second video today, I did talk about how 368 is going to likely be tested, which is exactly where Tesla went to. Now, if we break this, I would not rule out Tesla going as high as 375 or very close to that area for another big push. And it's very possible Tesla tries to go a little bit higher with some data coming out. But even if we go a bit higher, I can't promise this move is going to last for too much longer, because I do think a market wide pullback is about to start as soon as next week. I'm going to break down exactly why that is. But let's first talk about some news, then I'll break down the charts. First and foremost, there's been some big news that's come out that as Tesla's being armed with a new permit from the state's Department of Motor Vehicles, Tesla's preparing to begin testing its autonomous technology in Nevada. And that's some awesome news. This is some amazing news. As Elon Musk did mention this 2 months ago. And there's been a lot of talk about how Tesla's going to continue to expand in different areas in Texas, Nevada, California, and Florida. And now it looks like Nevada is next on the list. I think this is fantastic news, and this is really benefiting their overall share price. This will help build a lot more revenue, and this is just adding to more excitement in what Tesla is going to be achieving. There's an exact quote from Elon Musk, who once again talked about the Bay Area, Nevada, Arizona, and Florida, and a number of other places where they're going to be launching their robotaxi, once again working on getting the necessary permits and getting through regulations. So it's a fantastic piece of news. This is part of why Tesla's up, alongside the fact that different analysts do have some good ratings for Tesla. Wedbush is still saying Tesla will outperform the markets, and the price price ratio is climbing right here, which means that Tesla's building some strength. Now, Fridays, Tesla tends to be 50-50. Half the time we're green, half the time we're red on Fridays. And there tends to be more volatility at 11 o'clock a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So what does all of this mean for Tesla? I just want to say that Tesla's breaking out. It's still looking quite strong, but I need to see this hold above 368 to really continue this run. We're at resistance right now, and we're going to see if we break past that or not. If we do, I would not rule out the possibility of us pushing into like the 374 to 375 area next if we do end up breaking past this resistance. Now, if we lose 363, there's going to be a risk of us returning back down to like 360 flat to 358. So hopefully we try to hold above our support and we continue this rally. Another reason why Tesla rallied is because the whole market also pumped quite a bit, breaking new all-time highs. And yes, for now, we are looking a bit more in favor of bulls. I think we could even try to push a bit more tomorrow, but I do believe a top is going to be forming very soon. I'll talk about that in just a couple of minutes. The QQQ also has a rising wedge, and we could try to go a bit higher, but I would warn you guys to be very careful at these levels. So the market pushing up thanks to CPI, and then Tesla's big news about expanding their robotaxi to Nevada, getting the necessary permits, is still very, very bullish. Tomorrow is going to be Friday, September 12th at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have the Michigan Consumer Sentiment data. Expect some volatility at 10 a.m. or 30 minutes after the stock market opens. Why did the market pump today? Well, we got CPI data. As a reminder, core CPI month over month was as expected at 0.3%. Same thing with year over year. Core was at 3.1%. Everything was aligned with expectations. But all items CPI did go up a little bit month over month to 0.4%, which is slightly above expectations. And all items CPI year over year is at 2.9%, basically aligned with expectations. So in essence, when you look at CPI right over here, you guys can see that the burgundy looking line is all items without food and energy. It's flat, but then all items CPI did go up quite a bit. And that is once again important news. All of this is aligned with the expectations, so because this is what we were basically expecting. But we're going to see if this ends up shifting or not as time goes on. So we were expecting CPI to be in the range it's currently in. But what I'm talking about is the fact that there's a slight increase. And despite that increase, the market's not really too concerned yet. I also think that the market's now priced in the fact that the Fed's going to cut in September. There's a 92.7% chance we get a 25 basis point cut and a 7.3% chance we get a 50 basis point cut heading into next week. And I think that because this is priced in, right, when a lot of news is priced in, by the time it comes out, typically the market does get some kind of rug pull. And I think there's a very good chance of that potentially happening. So could we hold up for another couple of days? Yes, we can. But I think after FOMC, due to seasonality, due to lots of things kind of like coming together, there is going to be a risk of some downside. On top of this, there's been some news involving President Trump. President Trump is saying that he's going to be imposing tariffs on the chips and semiconductors. He did say this a couple of days ago, and he's saying they're coming very soon. He said they're going to be fairly substantial. So if he truly does that, that could be a very, very big factor affecting the markets. President Trump wants to see the semiconductors produced in the US. So his way of trying to incentivize companies to build more is to basically charge them if they're going to be producing chips overseas to ship them over here. So President Trump made that very, very clear. That's what he's trying to do. And if he imposes these semiconductor tariffs next week, 2 weeks, and 3 weeks, whatever time frame it is, of course, that could also have a huge effect on the markets because right now, semiconductors are the big leader in the market in the way in which we're moving. The US budget deficit also fell $35 billion or 9% from a year earlier as a result of President Trump's tariffs. That's another important piece of news affecting things. We also had Howard Lutnick, who is the Commerce Secretary, who came out. He criticized India, saying that he's not happy with them buying Russian oil, and he wants to see them sort out a deal if they stop doing that. He also mentioned that they'll have to renegotiate their tariffs if the Supreme Court does not rule in favor of President Trump's tariffs. So the Supreme Court are really just reviewing President Trump's appeal right now against what we saw from the appeals court. So we're going to see what happens. We're still kind of waiting on that. Finally, for Friday, we basically don't really have anything for earnings. But right now, the market is kind of like neutral. Neutral's making up the majority of sentiments. We're not greedy or fearful. Momentum is at great right now. It's going up, at least for the time being. The put to call option ratio is at great. We're going to see how this is affected. The VIX is also neutral, not really doing much. So there's just a lot of like neutrality in the markets. So you still want to be careful. Tomorrow, we basically have about 260,000 of these calls expiring. And we also happen to have about 643,000 puts expiring for a 2.48 puts to call option ratio, and 649 is max pain. So we'll see how that ends up affecting things. But notice a very similar pattern on SPY and Tesla. When the market is on an uptrend, Tesla tends to follow the trend. So this is like Tesla, and then this is SPY. You guys can see the charts look very similar. Once again, this is SPY, and this is Tesla. Well, notice something very interesting about SPY. I'm going to show you guys something very, very interesting. Check this out from the last month, okay? When we're red on Thursdays, we tend to be green on Fridays. When we're green on Thursdays, we tend to be red on Fridays. It's been doing that for the last month and a half. So let me prove that to you. Let's start right here so we started August, right? Thursday, August 7th, SPY was red. Friday, August 8th, SPY was green. The market was green, okay? And then on Thursday, August 14th, the market was green. On Friday, we went up a little bit more, then we rejected and turned red. Go into the next week, Thursday, August 21st, the market was red. We had an indecision day. Then on Friday, August 22nd, we saw a squeeze back up, not too far from the all-time highs at that time. Go forward another week. On Thursday, August 28th, the market was green. Friday, we were red. We came back down. Look at last week. The market rallied towards all-time highs again last Thursday. Then on Friday, we pushed a bit more high, and then we came back down, and we closed somewhat in the red. So today's Thursday, we pushed higher, we got a green close. What does this mean for Friday? The pattern suggests that we might go a little higher tomorrow. Then we could turn right back down and end up closing a bit in the red. And I think that's the most likely possibility. When the market runs hard, Tesla tends to run hard with it. When the market sells off, Tesla tends to sell off with it unless we get external pieces of news that affect things. So for Tesla, we have a nice looking cup and handle. We're looking a bit more bullish, and we could be looking for an attempt to fill the gap. I still think Tesla looks a bit more bullish and might try to outperform the markets, but we need to hold above 368. So if we're bullish on Tesla, we need to hold above 368. If we do, we're looking for 375 as our next target. If you're bearish on Tesla, you want to see Tesla fail at 363. If that resistance becoming support fails us, we could be returning back down to this level right here around 358. I think that depending on our data coming out for tomorrow, Tesla might go a little higher for like 373 to 375. But notice that when you go all the way back on the chart, there's this resistance right here. This was previous support becoming resistance around 374. So we might kind of consolidate between 374 and 368, that maybe slow down as the day goes on. And Tesla might get a flat close for tomorrow. But as the week progresses, going into next week, we might try to bounce early in the week again. But I think that even if Tesla tries to break out higher, FOMC will mark a top for Tesla in the markets, and Jerome Powell might cause a rug pull because the rate cuts are going to be priced in. And if President Trump finally imposes the tariffs he's been talking about, that could also cause a pullback in the markets and cause Tesla to start dipping. I hope that's as clear as possible. That's what I'm projecting so far. On SPY, if we're bullish, you want to hold above 658 to push for 660. If you're bearish, you want to see us lose 655 to start dipping lower. I predict we're going to be trying to push a little bit higher for basically 660. 658 to 660, and then we might slow down as the day progresses tomorrow to 655 and kind of consolidate. I also think that even if we hold up next week to start things off, there's going to be a big rug pull after FOMC on Wednesday because of the cuts being priced in. I think there's a very, very good chance we get a big rug pull soon. And I also say this because we have a big bearish divergence on SPY. If you look at the RSI and MACD, there's still a huge divergence developing, and seasonality really suggests that the last 2 weeks of September tend to be bearish, and I think that we're going to be looking for a substantial pullback. Another confluence is that we have a very, very pretty looking rising wedge on the QQQ alongside a triple bearish divergence. That oftentimes suggests that we're in a topping process. I'm not saying the market's going to crash tomorrow, so please don't misinterpret my words. I'm saying that we might try to go a little higher tomorrow. If we lose 582, of course, we're looking for 580 or below. But as long as we're above this, we're looking for 585 to 587 as our targets. And we'll see if we get some kind of rejection or not. I think we go a little bit higher. We push a couple more points. And then we're going to be watching this rising wedge. If it pans out, we're going to be looking for a dip back down to 580 or below, heading into next week, if not after FOMC. So could we go a bit higher? Yes, we could retest 585 to 587. Then we'll see if we get some kind of big rejection or not. For the IWM, we have basically 242 as our resistance, and we have support down here around this 240 area. If that fills us, we're looking for 238. But on the daily time frame, what you'll see is that we still have some more upside potential in the IWM. We have an inverse head and shoulders on the daily, and this could take us all the way up to about the low 240. So we could push another 2 to 4 points, and then I do expect us to form a top right around 242 to 244. A little bit more upside before we turn back down, and that in turn is going to be correlated with the markets. ES is going to be pushing for the low 6600, 6625 or so could be tested. Then we're going to see if this forms a top and starts to sell off to like 6550 all over again. And then after FOMC, we're going to see if we get some kind of rug pull. So be very, very careful. We could be going a bit higher before we form some kind of top. On NQ, we're going to try to test 24,000, maybe go a little bit higher. And we're going to see if we reject off that or not. If we do, we could be turning back down. But look for the low 24,000, and we'll see what happens after that. Bitcoin is looking for basically 117,500. We'll see if we reject or not. But I think there's a good chance we test around 117,000 for a little bit more upside, and we'll see if we get a rejection off that. As long as Tesla holds above 368, I do think we push for 374 or above. We might go a little bit higher on Tesla, but then be careful the closer we get to FOMC because things could really change with Jerome Powell after that. So we're still bullish. I do expect us to push a bit more. I think that as long as we hold above 368, Tesla could be pushing for the 375 area for a little bit more upside, but be careful if the market starts to slow down after that. One thing that could slow the markets is the fact that Nvidia has a massive gap down here. Are we going to fill the gap with President Trump's semiconductor tariffs? I think we're going to be testing 174 tomorrow. There's going to be a small pullback on Nvidia. Maybe we pop in the morning and start dipping to 174. The market may push a little bit higher, new all-time highs and SPY in the QQQ, and then we could start to dip towards the end of the day. Apple is going to be favoring 232 for a little bit more upside. I think there's a good chance we try to push a bit more looking at the test of our key EMAs. For other tickers out there, we have Netflix. It's dipped quite a bit. It might be trying to retest 1215, and we'll see if it rejects for a temporary bounce. MSTR is going to be likely testing 329. We'll see if we bounce or not. I do think we're going to likely be testing that. Celsius is kind of consolidating here. We need to hold above 58 to push back up to 60. If we lose 57.5, we're going to be turning back down to fill this gap. So I would want to be careful if we consolidate. If we lose 57.6, I'm looking for that gap fill back down to 56 flat. So there's a risk of downside. Supermicro's looking pretty good right here. We got a nice looking accumulation. As long as we don't end up losing 42, we're going to be looking for 45 to hold. As long as that holds, we're looking for 47. On Palantir, for those who are interested, I think we dip a little bit on Palantir because we have these EMAs to test and the 4 hours showing some weakness. I think Palantir is going to be dipping to like 160 to 162, and then we'll see if we bounce a little bit off that. I think we're going to be range bound for some time, and then maybe after FOMC, it either launches higher or it gets some kind of rejection move. But for now, we're looking for some consolidation. Look for a dip to 160, and we'll see if we bounce on Palantir. Might be a little bit of downside that's coming, judging by the daily and the 4 hour. Rivian got a big rejection, might be dipping to about 13.69, and we'll see if we bounce or not. But I do anticipate a little bit of downside if 14 fails us. SoFi has support at 25.7 and 25.25. Look for some downside, and we'll see if we bounce. AMD is going to try to bounce back up to about 157 to 160, so look for some upside, and we'll see if we turn back down. ARM is pushing right here. We're going to be looking for 160 as our resistance. PayPal has 67.5 and then 68.25 as our resistances, so we're still favoring upside for the 68s. Coinbase has a nice double bottom accumulation. We could be looking for an attempt for 328 as our resistance, so I do anticipate some upside that's coming. Amazon is making lower highs here. If we don't hold above 231, we could be dipping back down towards 225. For Meta, we're also forming kind of like a distributive pattern. We might retest 753 and we'll see if we reject and start dipping lower. If we end up losing 749, we're going to be dipping back down towards 742. So look for a bounce here and a dip back down to basically 742. Google could be once again retesting 236, and we'll see if we bounce or not. I think there's a good chance we start to dip back down, and I think 236 is likely going to be where we end up dipping to. Microsoft is also looking a bit more decent. We saw a nice push in the after hours, but notice that the 510s are very tough for it to break. I need to see us hold above 510 to remain like really bullish. We might touch 510. If it doesn't hold, we could be dipping back down to 504. So it needs to hold above 510 or else 504 is coming again. DJT is going to be favoring move back down to 16.6. The VIX has a falling wedge, so it may continue to downtrend, might actually dip to the lower 14s as the market goes a bit higher. But then watch and see if we get some kind of breakout by next week thanks to FOMC. The 10-year is also dipping here, could be looking for 3.8, especially because of the cut that's coming by the Fed. The dollar and crude are both dipping, which is bullish for stocks. So for now, I could see SPY try to go for new all-time highs between 658 and 660. And then we're going to see if we get a big rejection. The QQQ might try to test 585 or so, and we'll see if we reject. Keep in mind there's a rising wedge, so even if we push a bit, we might get a big rejection very soon, possibly after FOMC or even sooner. And then for Tesla, yes, we could be trying to go higher if we hold above 368 to push for the low 370s. 374 to 375 could be coming, but we'll see if Tesla gets a rejection afterwards. So be careful with Tesla, because once again, if the market starts to sell off after FOMC or after our pieces of news, that could also slow Tesla down. So you want to be very, very mindful of that. So get ready for tomorrow. We have the Michigan Consumer Sentiment data at 10 o'clock a.m. Do what you have to do, guys, and I'll see you guys tomorrow with another update. I'll be back before the market opens to give you guys updates about how we're looking during the pre-markets. Until then, I wish you all nothing but the best. I thank you all so much for listening, and I'll be back very, very soon. Thank you for listening, guys. Have a good one, and peace out.